But
Welcome to Let's Go Live. I'm Gigi Mara and I have with me romance and historical fiction author Elaine Strawn. Welcome,
thank,
Elaine.
thank you. So happy to be
I
here.
am so excited to have you on. So, what I thought we would do is kind of divide the interview in two portions. The first will be all your books, right? And then I want to talk about off and running publication because I know that you reach out and help new and aspiring authors. And I want to give those that are listening or watching that opportunity to be able to ask you any kind of questions.
That sounds great.
Yes. So you write under your name, but you have multiple genres. So tell us
I
the different
do.
genres that you write under, because there's a few.
I'm just not good at staying in my lane. What can I say? And it's, maybe it comes with being 60. I don't know. I've had a lot of different life experiences and I like to write what I know. But I'm a teacher, a first grade teacher, have taught for almost 40 years. And so to graduate my master's back in the 80s, I wrote a book for new teachers about the discrepancies between a classroom and college and revamped that in 2019. And so I just wanted to know, because I could write it literally with my eyes closed, what it was like to self publish. I was just very curious about the whole process. I'm not the most patient person in the world, so I just really wasn't going to sign up for 67 rejections in 5 years, you
I
know.
know.
So anyway, and I know you're an author as well, so you've had your journey, but I released it in January of 2020, and
Mhm.
then COVID hit,
Oh, right after.
and
Right after.
yeah, just shut that puppy down. So then I had already started writing. It turns out I actually come from a family of writers. Bill Corum is the most prolific and well-known writer, even though it was decades ago. He was a sports writer, but my great grandmother was a writer. My great grandfather was a writer. I have a cousin that's a writer. My sister has written in the academic world.
Oh
So
my
anyway,
gosh. Okay, Elaine,
yeah,
we have to
the
stop there.
pressure.
So let's pause right there for a moment. One, you're amazing to be 40 years in education. So let me just stop and give you kudos there because you are shaping the minds of our little children. And that is very challenging. I have three, my sister and her two nieces are both teachers in the elementary, and one's a high school
Okay.
science teacher. So it's not for the faint of heart.
No, especially in today's world.
Oh, that's what I
Especially
was
in
going to
today's
say.
world.
You originally wrote the book, and you said in the '80s, and you wanted to kind of zhuzh it back up, make it pie.
Right.
I'd imagine a little bit more applicable. The climate has changed in many regards.
When
Um,
I was a seasoned teacher, by then I had 30 years of experience. So I just wanted new teachers to have like someone in their ear saying, yes, it's going to suck. Yes, you might cry in front of your kids, but everyone will be okay at the end of the day. And so will you. Tomorrow
okay,
will be a new day.
that
So,
is the realest statement I've heard because the crying in front of your
oh, yeah,
kids,
yeah,
um,
been
being
there.
that being that I have teachers in my world, I mean, I never saw it, but I had, like hardcore teachers. But you're right. The new ones lead the profession. The turnover rate with teaching and education is just unprecedented now. And then
Seriously.
and you have a crisis. There's a shortage because the new ones, it's not what they thought it would be. And the old ones are aging out. And so there's a huge gap. And then you get
Right.
all these they're either unaccredited or they're going for their accreditation. And then they decide, heck, this isn't for me.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely, especially being in public education, and I'm a Title I teacher, so we have a lot of students that have serious, deficits in different levels, multiple levels, and yeah, it's education's in a crisis, and you don't even have to have a kid or be in education to know that. You can just watch the news and be like, oh wow.
Yeah.
So, but
There's Title One and low to mod. So I
yeah.
completely understand. She's been in it not quite as long as you, but she is the oldest. She has seniority. So I imagine both this book that you've written and then your wealth of knowledge, you are probably the one who's been there the longest. So everybody comes to you because you know all the answers because you've been doing it for so long.
Yes. I try. I mean, the thing about anything you do, anything you're passionate about, is you keep growing
Mhm.
within that. And definitely education has changed a lot. Some things have even circled back. And, but I feel like the day that I stop learning as a teacher, it's time to retire. So, teachers have to keep moving with the world and society. And because the jobs that our kids, like the 6 and 7 year olds that I'm teaching today, haven't
Mhm.
even been invented yet.
Oh, I'm
By the
sure.
time they're 20 year olds, it'll be like, oh, who would have thought that could be a job in, 2040? So,
So let's talk about your book. When you originally put it out to now, how much reworking and research had to be done?
um, I'm going to be honest. It's not very academic. So when this happened, this is what I did. This is what I learned. This is
Mhm.
what you can take away from this situation. And, it's divided up into how my story began to, how parent relationships, because sometimes the parents are more challenging than the kids, actually.
I hear it all the time.
You didn't hear that from me,
I
but
hear that
I've
all the time.
people have mentioned in passing. But just from curriculum to classroom management to setting up your classroom to just making sure you keep that fire lit and knowing that new teachers come to us with a wealth of knowledge. They're right out of the gate. And they often have that passion, carry that passion into their classroom because they're so excited to have their own classroom. And they just need someone to nurture that through the first 2 or 3 years and make sure that they get going, that
And
they're
that's what
off
we
and
want.
running.
We want
So,
that energy. We want that passion because the
exactly.
kids just vibrate off it. They gravitate off of the energy that they're receiving. So,
Absolutely.
what made you decide to even write the book in the first place? Was it because of lack of resources that you experienced? You thought, I'm going to pay it forward?
Well, I'm a talker and I just have such a passion for education.
Mhm.
And I like to present at conferences and I'm gravitate towards new teachers and having conversations with them. And even we have, new students that come into our building, like they will be student teachers in January, but they start with us in August. And I'll have my kids playing a game and it'll be like, so what did you learn about our kids from that? Like watching them play a game, what did you learn about them?
Mhm.
And just giving them those open ended opportunities to start building, oh, this is how I do this to learn that. And that everything doesn't have to be a computerized test, it doesn't always have to be pen and paper. Sometimes you're just making observations. And I just wanted to share very practical, hands on information for teachers to use that they could literally be like, oh my God, classroom management, page 30. Okay, I have an idea. So, but definitely I had my own home based preschool program for 18 years and then dusted off my teaching certificate and went into public education. And I had a lot of experience, but it was a whole different ball game. And, the first couple of years were rough. And I think that also gave me, like, I gravitated towards the new teachers in our building. And I think that gave me kind of insight into what it felt like to be a new teacher because I had run my own business for 18 years. So it was how I said it. And all of a sudden it's like, well, this is how we're doing it now. Somebody else is in charge, which was an adjustment in itself. So anyway, I decided to write it just to go through the process of self-publishing and see what it was like. And it was a learning experience for sure.
So you started, it came out in January of 2020, and then COVID hit literally 6 weeks later, I believe. How
Yeah.
did everything shut down? Because I would imagine you couldn't really necessarily go traditional
Oh,
publishing
yeah.
because everybody got sent home. Some states, were shut down longer than others. I'm in a red state. If you're in a blue state, it all kind of fell along those lines.
Well, I
So,
mean,
did it force your hand to self publish, or did you know all along I wanted to self
I
publish?
knew all along. There's a couple that they have their own publication company and they only publish teaching journals. And I had sent my book to them, and she literally called me and she's like, "I believe in your book so much, but it's too niche for what we're going to publish. But I will walk you through self-publishing if you're interested." And so literally, I spent an hour on the phone just. What about this? What about this? What about this? And she hooked me up with the layout person, the person who also gave me support through the process. And then that just kind of inspired me to, well, I'm just going to start my own publishing company too. I'm not just going to be an author. I'm just going to start my own publication company. And, I'm just such a nurturer. I just can't even help myself. And so, anyway, just finding authors that have a dream of getting what's in their mind, their concept onto paper and eventually into a book and on Amazon or a indie bookstore or wherever they want to sell a book fair. There's so many different ways to sell a book these days.
Ivan Scott in the comments said, I've read Elaine's books before and she is an awesome writer. Oh,
Aw, thanks, Ivan Scott.
I know. He's wonderful. I adore him. He's been on here, I don't know how many times now.
I know, and I'm very partial to redheads, so I love that that's always his character. So,
So you had released it in 2020. It's wonderful that you had a mentor to kind of handhold you through the process because self-publishing is not for the faint of heart. I mean, you have to stay in it every single day because the doubt and the fear and the panic creeps in
oh
often.
yeah,
And then there's
oh,
a zillion steps that you have to take. And most of them you don't know. You just find out, when you're on the road. And there's
the
also a
hard
lot
way.
of different ways to market your book. So you're right in the sense that it is extremely challenging, many different ways to sell a book.
Definitely. I really, Amazon obviously is an easy way to go. And bookstores are fine, but they obviously need their cut
Right.
of, providing that service. And honestly, my favorite thing to do is book fairs. We are really fortunate. I'm in Columbia, Missouri,
Mm.
and we have a great adult book fair, which is kind of becoming a theme, I'm noticing. And I have Kansas City and St. Louis on either side of me, and so especially when I retire, it's like, let's go to Nashville this weekend, let's go to Louisville this weekend, let's go, just hitting those. And if I can sell enough books to pay my hotel fee and my bar tab, I'm good. That's all I can ask for.
Oh my gosh, did you see those fireworks behind you that popped up?
Yes, my thumbs up.
That was
Yes,
perfect timing.
that was.
So that is really your nonfiction book, but you
It
also
is.
write romance and you also have historical fiction. So walk us through which one came first and why.
So I took 2 years to write Kiddie the Major, which is my historical fiction. And while I was learning the family of writers I come from, it just really occurred to me that I have a lot of family members on my family tree that were really had amazing careers. My great grandfather helped invent the X-ray. He was a doctor. He did plastic surgery on people, soldiers coming back from World War I that were disfigured,
Wow.
and he helped invent the X-ray and actually ended up passing away from cancer because people didn't know back then that
Radiation.
actually radiation is not good for you.
It causes
So
cures cancer, we know.
right, but his wife was also she published her first book in 1910, and it was very controversial at the time, and so it kind of catapulted her into being an author. And so Kitty, my grandmother, who
Elaine, can
I'm
we stop right
oh
there
sure,
one moment? Was it controversial because she was a woman writer, or
ooh,
was it the
good
subject matter?
question. I think both. I
Oh,
think both.
okay.
But the subject matter is what, she's sexually assaulted in the story and becomes pregnant, and she's like a 17-year-old girl.
Oh,
So very taboo to talk about. Like they couldn't even say the word pregnant, in 1910. So yeah, I think it was subject matter. But when I start Kiddie the Major, what I did was it's the 1920s.
mhm.
My grandparents met, they both died in the 50s, so I've never met them. To me, they are people I would hang out with on a Saturday night any day of any time. And but they met at Columbia University in 1920,
Mhm.
and Kitty is 18. The major has been, fought for his life and has done so many heroic things that he comes home as the youngest major.
And
And
probably the oldest person. You know what I mean?
on
What he's witnessed and
campus.
seen.
Yeah.
Hmm.
He graduated with a journalism degree from the University of Missouri here in Columbia, which is where I also graduated from, one of my daughters. And then decided to pursue a second degree in journalism in New York at Columbia when he got finished with the war.
Yeah.
And so basically, the book, just every chapter is one of the years, and it just covers, their. Um, What I love about how I started the story was they're at a rally for a presidential rally because Kitty is 18 and gets to vote. Like that 19th Amendment had just passed and they need to elect a new president in November.
Mhm.
And she's 18 and gets to vote. And, just she is very close to her father. And of course, I don't know any of this. This is just how I wrote the story. And they love to have like debates, but she's not even sure he would vote for because she's not sure if it's because it's no one else's business or he wants her to make her own
Right,
choices.
right.
So I really wanted her to be a strong female character. And if my daughters were on here, they'd probably be like, uh-huh, yeah, we see
Nailed
that.
it. Nailed it,
So,
Mom.
yeah. So, but yeah, it's just about them dating and growing their careers and her like, I don't have to stay home and cook and clean for you. I'm not in a hurry to have kids. I want to go out and have fun. And she was an art student, so she was, grew up in a house with a radio and they had money. They were Brooklyn, a well-known Brooklyn family, and you know, just how a young farm boy from Boonville, Missouri got placed into New York City after the war and how he still will always have his roots in Missouri, but he really had a love and a passion for New York City and lived there his whole life. So
So, Kiddie and the Major is really based upon your grandparents, although you never met them. How much research did you do into your own family tree? Did you leverage your parents to ask about their grandparents, or was that not an option and the whole story is fiction?
so basically no one's around that could answer my questions.
Mm.
But can I show you his
Of
book?
course.
So
Oh,
we discovered that he had written this biography. My sister actually discovered it.
how'd you get it in
And
print though? Because a lot of those older books, they're not
oh,
in print.
this is actually still on Amazon.
No
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, I actually bought this to take to the Derby next week to thank them for and add it like at the in the museum at the Kentucky Derby they have artifacts of his and I'm like, well, this needs to be in there. But this kind of helped me like I pulled nuggets from this book about like personal things but also just his career. Like his real name was Martine Windsor Corum. So that's a mouthful. So on his sports storyline, he would put M.W. Corum. Well, at one point, his boss decides he gives him a daily
Yeah, it's so
sports story, and his boss is like, "Yeah, we're gonna go with Bill." And he's like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, we're gonna change your name to Bill. It's just, Bill Corum. It just flows." And so I write in the story that happens and how Kitty supports him. Like he comes home and she's like, "What's wrong?" And so he tells her, and he's like, "How does one man change another man's name?" Like it wasn't even a question, would you do this? And so she's kind of like, "Well, do you trust him?" And he's like, "Yeah, he's the best at what he does." And she's like, "Well, your successes are his successes, then you got to go with it." So he's
that's
like,
really common. And when you go into like the 20s through the 50s, from what I understand, because it happened to my uncle, it's very common for people to change
"Really?"
their name to try and remove any kind of like ethnic tone to it. So if your name, I don't know, is just,
Okay.
like Italian or German or Czech or Polish, they want to like make it so Americanized. And so they would do that
Yeah,
because it made you more broad stream appealable and publishable and
that
not,
makes sense.
yeah, because the immigration patterns, you'd bring over people from your village over, across the pond. And so that would lead to bias people would have. So I've heard
Absolutely.
that many.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
So it's just nuggets like that, and his one of his very first stories. He writes about a tennis star, and he met her at the end of World War I, and he actually includes in the book the article he wrote. And the thing about Bill Corum was he didn't just tell you who won or lost. He wrote a story about the sport event. And so he talks about her big floppy red hat and her red high heels, how she tripped on them coming down the gangplank as she got off the ship. And I'm like, yes, I can work with this,
Yeah, he paints a picture.
And yeah, so it's just like pulling nuggets from his book and then plugging them into the years where they went to. And then also thinking about how Kitty would react, like when he would be gone for a month at a time. What is she doing? Waiting for him to come home, like having to realize that she has to create her own life,
Correct.
and so she ended up actually being a model. And so I got to write how she came to meet Edna Crompton, who was a very famous painter, and many of her paintings were on like Red Book and McCall's. You'd be amazed how old some of these magazines are. I'm like, what? Vogue was around in what, 1921? And so the research was really fun. It took me 2 years to write the book because I was very anal about making sure everything was, right on the money and a sign of the times, but also very accurate.
Well, I imagine you want to, right? Because in a way, it's paying homage to your family.
Exactly. Yeah, when my cousins read it, so Kitty had a sister, Iris, and looking at the family timeline, I realized that Iris had to have been born premature because there's not even a year between the two girls.
Oh, wow.
And so we know that's the only logical thing. And she was the baby of the family. So they're very close, as I am with my sister, and my girls are with each other. And so they are in cahoots together a lot throughout the story. But her grandchildren are, one of them is who reached out to me through ancestry.com
Mhm.
and was just like, hey, we noticed that you're a quorum, and the rest was history. And just getting, like, I have postcards from Kitty when she was a little girl. She lived in the Japanese house, which is a historical landmark in Brooklyn. And I have telegrams from when my father was born, that from like all kinds of famous people, the actual telegrams. So it was really kind of them to share all that with us. And then my aunt was really big into ancestry.com, and she even found the manifest from when they sailed to Bermuda on their honeymoon, like what dates they sailed, who else was on the ship with them. I'm like, okay, so you got to write that into the story, right? So it's just like,
Wow.
it's like a little treasure hunt. What can I find to go with this chapter?
How
So,
special. And you had said that he had been a sports writer his entire career. And
yes, he
so
was.
I know not to get too in depth, but why is the Derby important to your grandfather? You said you're going to take his book to the Derby, where
I
they're
am.
yeah.
So he, in 1925, Bill Corum coined the phrase "run for the roses." And even if you're not a Derby fanatic like I am, and what's interesting is I didn't know him at all, but growing up, I was always horse crazy. And so he coined that phrase in 1925. But in his book, nowhere does he say what inspired him, why he wrote it.
Hmm.
And I honestly don't think he realized how iconic it would grow to be,
Yeah.
you know. And so this year marks the 100-year anniversary of him coining that phrase. And he also called, as a sports writer, he was also asked to announce. He had a very deep, gravelly voice, a very recognizable voice. And like at the time of his death, he had his own sports show with CBS. He was doing commercials on in print and on the
Wow.
air. And so anyway, he called for 2 decades. He called the race. And if you go to the Kentucky Derby Museum, like we visited there, and you can listen to him call the races, which is just like,
No way. That's
raises the hair on your arm. It's just like,
so neat. So special.
yeah. So he ended up, Matt Wynn was president of the Kentucky Derby for decades. And when he passed away, Bill Corum was named the president in 1949. And he was president of the Kentucky Derby at the time of his death in 1958. So he just has such a history with the Derby. He supervised the first televised Derby in 1952,
Mhm.
and also in 1925. So I got to just make up what inspired this little phrase of his, "Run for the Roses," which was so much fun. But I decided him and Kitty like to have a good time. I'm not going to lie, and in my book they do.
Well,
So
they
I
seem to be a
decided,
very modern couple for the times.
yeah. Definitely. Think, Great Gatsby and F. Scott Fitzgerald, like, yeah, they were right there with them. But he knows that it's going to be on the radio. For the first time in 1925, the Kentucky Derby was broadcast live on the radio. And so he wants Kitty to host a party, and Kitty's like, do I have to clean? Well, I need to cook. Like, tell me about this. So anyway, they end up having a party, and finally to convince her, he's like, come on, Kitty, everybody knows it's the Run for the Roses. And so then he's like, oh, when he goes that night to write his story for the paper, the New York Times, that sticks with him, and he makes that the byline for his story. So, but
And
yeah,
the
it's a recurring theme.
I said, and the rest they say is history.
And here's Kitty and the Major. So
I love that.
I want it to be like very romantic, New York. So, but
I
yeah.
know this is nearly impossible, but it would be so special if you could get your hands on somehow her 1910 book. But that's just,
You know what? I've tried, and actually you can Google it, and I believe it's the library in Iowa has actually put it online, and I have it printed out. But to have an
no
actual,
way.
that's how I know what happened, because all you can find on the internet is controversial topic.
Mm.
But then I was like, well, so what's controversial in 1910?
Yeah, you
And so I printed it out. Yeah, because I was like, I gotta have this. So yeah.
okay, but that's amazing that someone even preserved this story for it to
No,
even be
right?
eligible. Think of how many books over the last 115 years are just lost, just
Yes,
gone.
absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
amazing. You even have the
So
story.
yeah, it was called The Blue Lawn, and it had a blue cover. And yeah, her dedication even is to her father and for everything he ever gave her, and to her husband for everything he continues to give to her. And I was like, okay. So,
I wonder
but
if you
yeah,
could reproduce it so
I've
it's available.
actually, when I retire, I would like to take Bill's book because copyright will be up. Holt published it in 1959. And so I would like to do that when the 70 years is up. And also, I've thought about doing her book too. So,
Oh, yeah. Because even if you put it up, you recreate it and put it up on Amazon for your family.
yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
amazing.
Yeah, one thing my cousin said about reading, Iris's grandkids said about reading Kitty and the Major was that they never knew any of them either. And so it really gave them a sense of family, and feeling more connected to people from our past because I just painted such a vivid picture of the relationships and, what they all went through.
Of
So I was like,
course.
thank you. I was a little nervous for them to read it
Oh,
actually because,
yeah. Because
they've had more connection than I have over the years, and but they were like, "No, we love it. It was great." So,
well, and you want to get it right out of respect for them, and then to
absolutely,
have it go out to judgment for not, it's one thing to judge by strangers that are buying your book, but it's another one, it's people that know the players, and you're like, oh,
yeah,
geez, that's pressure.
and be like, "That is not what happened," and be like, "Oops," but no, it was like I literally was sweating bullets. I'm like, "Okay, good luck." Like I sent them all a complimentary copy, so
Yes,
a nice little, signed my name, autographed it for them. So.
that's sweet. So tell us about your other books. Yeah.
So I am a big romantic at heart, and I also wrote Strokewaves, which is
I love
about, and I knew that what I wanted the cover to look like and everything, it's a heart that looks like a brain.
it.
And 4 years ago, my husband had a stroke. It'll be 4 years on Saturday, actually. And so we got a crash course on what it's like to survive a stroke, first of all, a
Wow.
very serious stroke. He was in the hospital for 6 weeks. And to kind of buffer how life had literally just flipped, I was laying in bed. It hadn't been that long. And I was like, this stroke is kind of like a earthquake. We
Hmm.
can't even see all the damage yet. We don't even know the ramifications of how life is different. And we just keep getting these aftershocks, like insurance, what's happening with your job, our
Hmm.
children, our friends. And then my little creative brain said, I'm going to help you out. And wouldn't Strokewaves be a kick-ass title for a book? And I was like, okay. So when I couldn't sleep, it literally lived in my head for a year before I even started putting it on paper because, there really was no time or energy to actually sit down and type something out. But yeah, I created two characters who meet here in Columbia at one of our favorite restaurants, mine and Joe's favorite restaurants, our family's actually now, over a football game. We're big Missouri Tiger football fans. And they go from Columbia to Kansas City to DC to Chicago, and some of my favorite cities. And so, anyway, one of the characters, the guy in the story, has a stroke at the very moment that he is being accused of embezzling $1 million. And so it's kind of, did he really do it? Is he being framed? And they both have people from their past. Because I love a good romance, but I love a good mystery. And to like, that did not just happen. And so, how the stroke kind of changes the narrative of how they can pursue, you know, what's going to happen next. And so anyway, it's a little dramatic, but it really was fun to write, and I knew that the event would happen, and it's very heartfelt when I wrote that. It's not based on exactly what happened in my family, but I definitely, like things you deal with at the hospital and all that good stuff, know how just to sit in the emergency room and be like, okay, so this is happening, this is real. And then I took the nemesis from this book and put into this book. Every time I see you falling, and the best way, one of my, I don't know her really well, but she really loved Strokewaves. And she's told me that I love how I hated her so much in your first book and loved her so much by the end of the second book. Like you totally manipulate my feelings for her. And I'm like, yes. All right. So anyway, so you don't have to read the first one to be able to enjoy the second one, but there are lots of twists and turns in the second one too. And my newest novel I'm working on now that Kiddie the Major is like off and running. Oh, no pun intended. Oh wait, no, I didn't. But I just really love having romance with a little, twists and turns, a little scary stuff happening every so often. So
Well, I have to start off by saying I am so sorry that happened to your husband. And I know if you don't want to
thank you.
get into it, but is he better? Are you adjusting?
So we really just had to rebuild our lives. We are very much like Kiddie the Major, that we're very socially active. He owned his own wine store for a decade, and he didn't at the time, which was a blessing. And our daughters, we had one in LA and one in DC, and so they were, we all rallied and got through it. And it was a really hard time, and we are just very, very grateful to be 4 years down the road. And we had to learn, like, how do you go to a football game in a wheelchair, because his left side does have an impairment, and he can walk, like he walks a couple of times every day just to, like, because he should, we should all get up and move. And he still works part-time. Like, he had a stroke April, and by August I'm like, so you ready to go back to work? And he's kind of like, what? And we were very fortunate that cognitively he never struggled. Like the next day he was telling me about his insurance. I'm like, that does not sound right. And I'm like texting the person at where he works, and she's like, let me check it. Nope, he's right. I'm like, what? So anyway, just randomly he had changed his policy to where we paid 20%. No, we paid a pretty sizable deductible, and then 100% was paid. So after we met this deductible, we knew that the rest of it would be paid by his insurance, which it had been 20%, which, as you can imagine, 6 weeks in the hospital was quite a bill. But so anyway, we still like to go out and have fun. Our lives have definitely changed, but everybody has things that happen in life that make life hard and a challenge, and you just got to pick up and keep moving. So
Do you think writing Strokewaves was cathartic, like a coping
Oh,
mechanism. You said it had hit you kind of an
absolutely.
opportune time. It kept nudging at you, but you're like, I need a year to adjust to my new normal.
Absolutely. I know my sister, she's in social work,
Mhm.
and she put her little therapist cap on and she's like, "Are you sure that's just not going to exasperate what you're going through?" And I'm like,
Good
"No,
question. Good question.
no, yeah." And I totally got her concern. And there were definitely scenes. I mean, I think we all, if we write books that make people feel things,
Mhm.
there are always scenes that we're going to write that feel challenging to us personally, because that's why we can write it so heartfelt because we have a connection to that scene. And
And
I
readers
mean, even
love
today,
that. Readers can feel the
absolutely.
honesty and your genuine emotions, and that's what's so beautiful about some of these writing our toughest experiences.
Absolutely. And I know people with a lot harder lives than what my family's been through. I mean, yeah, it was hard and we're happy not to be there, but there are a lot of people that have really hard lives and things they're going through. And, you know, you just, I have really noticed recently that when you read books now, that people are putting triggers like in at the beginning of the book. And I just think that's a sign of our times that people are acknowledging that, yeah, I'm mentally that's triggering for me. And definitely I have some triggers now. And but I think that when you help, my biggest thing I want when people read a book that I wrote is they feel a connection to the characters and they're like real people to them by the time they finish the book. They're like, I just want to have one more conversation with her. She's so interesting. Or I wonder what those crazy kids are up to today. Like they want more, 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 more. So
Which is a huge compliment, right? Because even though we think we're
yeah.
done and that we've told the story, when readers want more, it's the best gift.
It really is. And I mean, I'm a reader too. I've been a book lover for years, ever since I can remember. And, I love when I really get into book that is a series because I just get so hooked into a character and I do need more. And then when there aren't any more, I'm like, I really need them to write another one. So there is going to be another Kiddie in the Major. And it'll take a while because obviously the research and everything, but definitely I will write another one. But I'm excited to do that. And, I just really love writing and see that when I retire from teaching, that's really going to be my second calling. And I'm excited to do that. So,
Does that second book pick up where the story leaves off?
it finishes in 1929 for their anniversary, which is September. And I just didn't feel qualified to write the heartbreak of the depression. And also, Kitty and the Major, I feel like probably had a bubble and that they really didn't feel the heartbreak and the desperation and, how traumatic the Great Depression was for so many.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to start the next book. It's their 10-year anniversary in 1932 and they're going to Paris. So think that I can write that trip off? It's research. Come on. So
I think
that's
so.
what I'm hoping.
I am not your CPA, so good luck in trying.
Okay, you won't sign off on that. That's fine. That's
Just
understandable.
put
So
on a book fair or something of that nature.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. I went to a writer's retreat in Paris, so I got so much better.
Oh,
So
fantastic. So that's what you're working on next will be that one. You're researching it now, but you also said there's another romance book. Is that Kitty and the Major, the second one, or is it a totally different project?
totally different. Yeah, I literally have trouble sleeping at night. Sometimes I'll wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and be like, oh my God, that would be amazing. And I'm sure you do too. I think it's just, something writers have to deal with. But no, it actually, and I feel like most authors write from things they know or experiences that happen. I love the quote, you should know that I'm a writer and anything you say or do could be held in a story.
It's so
It's like,
true.
I warned you.
Mhm.
But no, I was picking up my dog from the groomer one day and we were having a conversation. And for whatever reason, it popped into my head. I wonder what happens if somebody doesn't pick up their dog. And I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder what traumatic, interesting, crazy thing happened that a person does not pick up their dog. So I created this character that has her own dog grooming business, and she has had this client that she's like, he's kind of cute, for like 3 years. And one day he doesn't show up. And so it's just going to be what happens as she goes to the police and like, I need to file a missing. Well, ma'am, maybe he just didn't want his dog. No, he loves his. So we're a big dog family. And so, yeah, I'm about 50 pages in. So this summer, when school gets out, I'll be like, let's go. So, yeah, already thinking about we're going to have a launch party with rescue dogs. I mean, come meet the pups, come take a pup home. So get your pup a treat. Yeah, it'll be
Oh my
fun.
gosh, that's such a great idea. And in fact, people do abandon their dogs because and mine's a bulldog, so he has to go into boarding because he boards at the vet in the front where he can walk around with the vet staff because he has a short nose and bulldogs are temperamental, whatever, health wise. But I asked him sometime, and he said, yeah, we've had a couple that just don't pick up their dogs. I'm like, well,
Really?
why? And
Yeah.
it's not traumatic or
They
like,
just don't show up. They're just done.
they're done. They abandon their dog to the vet
Wow.
boarding. What is this? I was like, wait, is that an option? When he said think
Yeah.
about dogs, I wait a minute.
Yeah. So,
So
seriously,
it does happen.
I did not know that.
That
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's such a great idea to have it as a charity event for rescues.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be fun? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because definitely, I think our society, as like just going through the grocery store and people in there with their dogs, therapy dogs are a real thing, emotional support. And you know what? If you don't have a family or, people, friends, I mean, dogs are a great companion, definitely. We actually took our dog to see Joe a couple times at the hospital just because they had such a bond, and I just thought it would be really, he was in there for 6 weeks. I'm like, okay, could we bring our dog into the hospital? And they were like, you bet, do it at night, when it's not so busy. And we're like,
Right.
okay. Well, she's a little big to like put in my purse, but okay. So yeah,
But it's true. There's doodle meetups, there's bulldog meetups. Like our two, like Home Depot and Lowe's. There's always dogs in there. I saw a dog that was in the grocery
yeah,
store. Like a little
yeah,
just sitting, and it's so. Yeah, I think there's a lot more companies that allow dogs to come in that are not service dogs, that are just regular, pets and companions.
yeah,
I
definitely.
So let's talk about off and running publications.
Okay.
So you had said that started, well, you're going to go and publish your book, your rewrite in COVID. So
Yes, my
talk,
teacher book. So kind of all came to a head that I decided that honestly, my legacy was to write this family story and kind of pay tribute to all these people that so many like my siblings and my cousins grew up not knowing. And so I was like, I should just start a business. And I really loved the title of Bill's book, Off and Running.
yeah.
And I thought it was just such a good comparison to when you bring your book to us at Off and Running, we are not going to own it. We're not going to sell it for you, but we will help you get your book off and running. We will like be a sounding board, be your cheerleader, be your voice of reason or your reality check. I had one client that loved his story and, made the edits and stuff. And then I was handing it to him like, you got the wrong title. And he was just like, what? And I said, yeah, that's not the right title. And he's like, well, what do you think it should be? So I told him, he's like, huh. And I could tell he was like a little offended, but I'm a very forthcoming person. As I said, it's your book. Like, I'm only giving you suggestions. It's your book. Your name is on it and it's your story to tell. I'm just thinking that might be a good option. And so he's in a writing club and he presented to them and he had shared, all through the process of writing the story. And they're like, she's right. And so he did rename it. And then he decided he loved it so much. He started a business and named his business that too. So I was like, you're welcome.
We know
So
us all.
anyway,
We can't see the forest through the trees sometimes. We can write 100,000 words, but we can't come up with a book blurb, or we can't come up with a log line or a tagline. So, yeah,
yes.
titles, sometimes we get married to them and you're like, you got the wrong title.
I know. Sometimes when I'm listening to my music on my iPod, I'll be like, oh, that'd be a fun title. Like I just have a running list of titles, and yeah, titles can be tricky because you want to hook. It's the first thing that the reader sees. So it needs to sound interesting. But at the same time, it needs to also represent the book. So yeah, titles can be tricky. But with Often Running, we just kind of walk you through all the different steps of like getting your ISBN number, getting on KDP with Amazon, finding someone to do your cover, getting your layout done, all the steps that you go through. And I'm the editor. And then my youngest daughter, she does social media. So also if social media is not your thing, then we can help you boost that. She creates the assets to help you promote your book. And if I'm going to an event, I always reach out to our authors. I'm actually doing an event this weekend, and there will be 3 off and running books there. And I'm like, yes, thank you. So, but yeah, we have a little horse to go with it because, we feel like that would be what Bill Corum would be like. Okay, yep.
Well,
So,
Bill's title transcends generations, right? Offer
yes,
Running is just
yes. The man had a way with words. There's no doubt about it.
so you come from a family of writers. Your daughter's involved in the business, and then you do everything from author services. So do you help them with the initial idea, how to write it, format it?
Um, Usually people come to me with a pretty solid idea, so I might help them like flesh it out,
Mm-hmm.
just like any editor would do, and kind of help them like, so you kind of really strayed off the beaten path at this part. Are you married to this, or could we like just take that out, or could you like rework it to like the reader is more like, oh, okay,
Like
because it's just
developmental editor and not so much line editor, or do you do both?
right. I do not want to be the bottom line. If you get it from Amazon and you're like, there's a mistake, that's not on me. Sorry, that you need somebody else. Like I'm more content. I really want to help you with content. So,
Like story coaching also.
yes. I'm just such a nurturer, and one of my clients, she's like, "You must be an amazing teacher because you are just making me feel so good about my book right now." I'm like,
Oh,
"Well,
that's so sweet.
I know." I was like, "Thank you." And she was a teacher too, so she even knew what she was talking about. So I'm like, "Thank you." So,
So I think there's when I looked on the website, there's what, 3 of you ladies in the
my daughter, Hannah, we call her the business end. She's always telling me, stop giving our books away or your books away. Cause I'm like, they're a new teacher. They can't afford this $10 book. Yes, they can. It's just a latte they
I
won't
was
have
saying
this
that's
week. Okay. Stop.
Starbucks, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Gracie really is a social media and she's my glue. Like the event that I'm doing this weekend. So can you make me a flyer for that? Can we post that? And so she's in LA and that's what she does with her job in LA for Vanquish Media. And she's just a natural. And as I said earlier in the evening, technology is not my best friend. When people are talking TikTok, I'm like, that's not for me. Instagram, I can manage all day long,
Mhm.
but Twitter, I feel like is kind of gone by the wayside, and Facebook, I feel is more like my personal things, friends and stuff. So I feel comfortable in my Instagram zone.
Who's the third one? You say Gracie does social media in the business end. Who's the
And
third person?
Hannah is my other daughter, my older
Oh, okay.
daughter. Yeah.
All
Yep.
family then.
And we're all redheads, aren't we, Scott? So, yep.
Well, he has his own redhead for inspiration, but if he ever that ever runs out, he knows where to
I
look.
know. Definitely. Yep. He's always letting me know when it's Redhead Day. I'm like, okay, thank you.
So, what is the event this weekend? So that way we can promote it on here.
It's actually Roachport. is a small community here close to Columbia, and it's connected to our MKT trail, which is a biking trail. They have a winery, they have lots of little shops and restaurants, and so they're celebrating 200 years of the MKT
Oh,
trail,
wow.
and decided to bring in authors from all over mid-Missouri and just give people a reason to come down and enjoy the community. So I was like, okay. So yeah.
So you'll be there with Off and Running Publishing?
Yes, I will have my books there, and then two of our off and running authors will be there too. One's poetry, and one has written two very different books, which I love.
Are you
And
able to
so,
share their
yeah.
names?
Linda Koenig is she's the person who, she's a retired teacher.
Mhm.
And her first book is about a group of women who have literally gone through life together. And as they're getting older and retiring and starting to age, like health wise, they decide to create a community. So they have six homes that they're all on the same property together and within close proximity of, and it's just such a beautiful story of women and friendship, and the curves that life throws anybody and how they support each other through that, and it's a beautiful story. And
It
then her
sounds like
other,
a beautiful story. Beautiful concept too in real life.
yeah, I'm like, sign me up. I'm not that no, okay, maybe like 30 years from now. But her other book is completely different. Someone told her about this place down South Missouri that is reported to be, it's called Warren's Hill, and to be evil. Like this
Oh,
brouhaha was released, and it's supposed to be a true story. And I do not like to do horror or anything like that evil.
that's
I'm a big
great.
baby. That's why I teach 6 year olds. So to read it, I told her, I said, this was the biggest challenge ever for me to edit this, because it was like, oh, okay, but I told her she just wraps it up so nicely
Mhm.
that it's a really good story. And I really enjoyed it. Especially they're so contrasting. One's so nurturing and, lifelong friendship, and one's like, ooh, beware the brouhaha, so. But yeah, she's amazing. And then Molly Jackman wrote a poetry book. She just released her book last year. And she has some great poems told from the heart. And yeah, I'm excited to do this event with both women.
So, how do authors, new and aspiring, find you?
So you can email me at strawnylane at gmail.com, or you can go and find Off and Running at our website, and that's a good way to connect too. So I check my email pretty much every day. So if you're in a hurry, that's your best bet. But you can also reach out to us through Off and Running. So,
Oh, it's a great website. I was kind of digging all through it, and I love the picture.
yeah.
Oh, yep, Off and Running just joined
Yay.
the live.
Gracie's like, while we're talking about it. So,
I know.
yeah.
So this,
Um, Gracie had a friend create the website for us, and Gracie that's part of her social media. Is she goes in and updates, and I'm always like, what if I did a story about this, or what if I? And she's like, put your energy here. She keeps my crazy like directed and focused. Like, this is what we're doing today. I'm like, okay, so.
so how many projects do you have then?
Um, well, right now I have two that are pretty, so what I decided to do, since Kiddie and the Major kind of, we lost our window. So I don't know if I finished that, but when Joe had his stroke, Kiddie and the Major was supposed to be released that Saturday with the Kentucky
Oh
Derby.
my
And
God.
so that just totally went out the
Of
window.
course, of course.
Just, and as you know, new release, there's a window. And so I missed that. And as I started to reach out to like bookstores, doing author talks, and even like getting an agent, I am thinking about doing that. It'd be like, well, we really like to look at a new release. And so last summer, I'm like, so I wonder if a second edition is considered a new release. And it was. I live by Google. If they say, then it must be true.
Of course.
But
As many of us
I,
do.
yeah, I just was like, I'm a different person. and I'm a much better editor, author than I was in 2019, which is when I started writing Kiddie the Major. And so and it was 400 pages, which I'm like, I am so
Oh,
sorry. I'm asking you to read 400 pages. Because I know even when I get a book, I'm like, how many pages? I don't know. I like,
yeah.
I have a comfort zone for what I want to read. So anyway, I just decided that I was going to revamp it.
Mhm.
And my person who does my layout, Liz, was a champ because I'm like, I just really need to like be able to do all my edits myself. And so anyway, we just finished it and I just placed an order for books last week and excited to do, yeah, May 1st will be the release date. And I'm just excited for Kiddie the Major to get a second chance and also for me to get a second chance and really enjoy this. They're just, doing this interview with you. And then in our local library, I'm doing the story behind the story author visit and talking about Bill and the Kentucky Derby and Run for the Roses. And there's just lots going on in the next month because I'm just like, let's just do this. So, yeah, even at the Derby, my daughters and we're going to be honored guests and we will be escorting the garland of roses to the winner's circle
Oh
after
my
the
God,
race.
that's a huge
Yeah.
honor. Huge.
So we're pretty pumped about that. And I just really appreciate
Mhm.
that the Derby really chose that way to give a nod to Bill Corum and his phrase and just, all the contributions he made to the Derby in general. So pretty excited about that for next week.
Oh
So,
my gosh, I would feel like I was a movie star at a red carpet premiere.
well, if you're watching and you see a pink cat, it's me. So, but yeah, I'm excited to do that.
Oh my,
Definitely going to be a big moment for
oh,
sure.
once in a lifetime, without a doubt. And then to share it with your daughters and that
Oh,
legacy.
yeah. When she asked me if I would, I'm like, can my daughters help me do this? Because I'm going to need some support. So she's like, absolutely. Yeah. So we're excited to do that and have our hats picked out, the dresses, the wardrobe is the big thing. So,
Yeah, that would stress
but,
me out. I'd have to get like a hire a stylist to be like, here's the deal. I'm gonna be in front.
yes,
It's gonna be
definitely.
televised. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that would.
we have only been once
Mhm.
before for a couple of reasons, but we went 10 years ago when American Pharoah won, and he ended up winning the Triple Crown. And my husband Joe was like, well, you can thank Bill because I'm sure he had something to do with that. I'm like, well, okay. But this year, I found out a week ago because I follow the Kentucky Derby on Instagram, so they're starting to release the
Mhm.
names. There's a horse called Publisher who is was sired by American Pharoah. So I'm like,
No.
okay,
Yeah, synchron
the odds are 30-1. So I'm like, let's go
all in on
long
that.
shot. And now I just got an email or saw on Instagram yesterday that the number one horse is named Journalism. I'm
You're
like,
kidding.
is this not meant to be or what?
Yeah, the
So
world is aligning. Uh-huh.
I know. I love it when that happens. So
If you could wave a wand and to put this out in the world, where would you be in a year?
oh, Paris, no, I'm just kidding. I would love to teach a couple more years, but I'm looking forward to just really focusing on being a writer. And I would love to do a writer's retreat in Paris or California or anywhere that's beautiful and relaxing. And I would love to continue, nurturing future famous authors and honestly, I let me just manifest this to everybody who might be on here, everybody who's not. I would love to see. So, do you know who the Pie Lady is on Instagram? Have you ever seen her?
Yes.
So, the Pie Lady will be doing Kidding the Major for me next
What?
week.
How
Yeah,
did you
I
score
had
that?
reached.
Huge.
I had reached out to her before Joe's stroke about doing Kidding the Major, because I just love how she does that. It's so creative. And I think anybody who's creative, you just really admire other creative people.
Of
And
course.
that's so unique how she does that. And so, people who don't know, the Pie Lady takes a book cover such as this and turns it into a pie. And she will like film how she does it. But I had reached out to her and I was like, okay, she told me her fee. I'm like, okay, well, let me think about it. And then it all didn't matter. So anyway, I reached her out probably like in December, January, I don't even know. And I'm like, I'm sure your rates have gone up, but I was just curious, how much you would charge now. And so when she told me, like, oh, okay. But anyway, she went back and found my old original email,
Mhm.
and she's going to honor that price.
Oh, from 5 years ago?
Yes.
That's
So from 4 years ago. Yeah. So, but she's followed by Jenna and Oprah Winfrey and Sunshine. Um, oh, the person in charge of Sunshine Books, that actress, I can see her face.
Reese Witherspoon.
Reese
She just
Witherspoon. So
company.
she has like posted on her website pictures with all of these ladies.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, Reese. So when you see this book, be like, hmm. And so I just expect Reese to like pick it up for book club and then like, we should turn this into a movie. And then, just like Gracie can direct, and I already know what part she needs to play, the tennis player, because she played all through high school and college. So she actually would make that role look really good. So anyway, I would just love to see that happen in a year since you asked. So,
Yes, I love that big energy, and let's hope it
so
happens because if we
yeah,
don't ask for it, it won't
right.
happen. So,
Manifest, manifest.
heck yeah,
So.
we put that out into the universe, and it will happen.
But I really do appreciate the pie lady doing that. And I thought that was so
It
sweet that she did that.
is.
So, and I'm very excited to see what she does. I'm like, can there be some roses in the picture too? Because she's good at
Yeah,
staging
yeah.
the book and the pie as well. So, but yeah, I'm a big fan of hers. And just like we have a magazine here inside Columbia that's going to run an article and just lots of things happening with the Derby. And I'm just going to ride that wave as long as I can.
Well,
So, well, who knows what will be in a year.
tag me when that pie is done so I can share it with my
Okay.
yeah followers.
Oh, I would love that. I would love that.
So we are
Okay.
coming up on our hour. Tell me
Okay.
where people can find you online, both you as an author and your publishing company.
So you can go to Off and Running, and is spelled out. It's not in our tag, but Off and Running Publications.com. You can go to our website. You can email me at Strawn, STRAWNELAINE at Gmail. You can find me on Instagram at Strawn EC. And then all my books are on Amazon. I'd much rather sell you a book in person, but I understand Amazon's very convenient. So, you know.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being on with me. It's been a pleasure to get to know
Thanks.
you and talk to you. And I wish you all the best and have a great time this weekend at the fair.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Great to be here, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Take care.